We all think we know the story of Jesus' 40 days in the desert. It's a cornerstone of Christian faith, a tale of spiritual strength against pure evil. We know the three temptations, the fasting, the victory. But what if that Sunday school summary sanitizes what really happened? The reality of those 40 days is far more brutal, complex, and revealing than most of us imagine. This wasn't just a spiritual pop quiz. It was a life or death battle against starvation, thirst, and exposure. It was a confrontation with wild animals and a psychological war that would have broken anyone else. What if the real battle revealed shocking truths that would change the course of history? In this video, we're digging past the flannel board version to uncover 5 shocking revelations from Jesus' 40 days in the wild that prove it was a pivotal turning point for all humanity. When we hear 40 days of fasting, it's easy to focus only on the spiritual side. But the first shocking revelation is realizing this was, first, a brutal fight for physical survival. The setting is the Judean wilderness, an unforgiving, rocky, and desolate landscape. We're talking about scorching days and freezing nights. Water is dangerously scarce. Then there are the animals. The Gospel of Mark makes a chillingly specific note that Jesus was with the wild animals. This wasn't a peaceful nature retreat. This was an environment with predators like jackals, vipers, and potentially even leopards or wolves. He was exposed, vulnerable, and completely alone. For 40 days and nights, Jesus didn't eat. While he likely drank water, in line with Jewish fasting customs and basic survival, the physical toll of starvation is devastating. Medical science suggests that, after the first few agonizing days of hunger, the pangs can subside, but an intense, gnawing hunger often returns as the body starts consuming its own vital tissues. Jesus would have faced extreme weakness, dizziness, muscle loss, and a brain-scrambling fog. Every single moment was a battle against a body screaming for help. This physical torment is crucial because it highlights his true humanity. His victory wasn't some detached, divine exercise. It was won in a state of utter physical depletion, where any normal person would be at their breaking point. Satan didn't challenge a comfortable, well-fed prophet. He attacked a man who was physically at the end of his rope, which makes what happened next even more staggering. The number 40 pops up so often in the Bible that we can almost read past it, but its use here is absolutely deliberate. The second shocking revelation is that this 40-day period was a powerful historical echo, meant to show that Jesus was here to rewrite the story of his people. Throughout Scripture, the number 40 is tied to periods of trial, testing, and transformation. Think about it. Noah and his family endured 40 days and nights of rain that washed the world clean. Later, the Israelite spies took 40 days to scout the Promised Land, a trip that ended in their fearful disobedience. And most importantly, the people of Israel wandered the wilderness for 40 years, a time defined by their failure to trust God. Even Moses spent 40 days and nights on Mount Sinai receiving the law. So when Jesus, right after his baptism, heads into the wilderness for 40 days, it's a massive statement. He was intentionally stepping into the very same arena where Israel had been tested and failed. In a way, he was reliving their entire national history as one faithful man. Where they complained about hunger, he resisted turning stones to bread. Where they put God to the test, he refused to test God by throwing himself from the temple. This wasn't just a random number. It was a clear signal that Jesus had come to succeed where both Adam and Israel had failed. The 40 days were a history lesson and a prophecy being fulfilled in real time. If you're seeing this ancient story in a new light, take a second to subscribe and click the notification bell. We go deep into biblical mysteries like this every week, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. We often picture the temptation as a defensive struggle, with Jesus just blocking attacks. But the third revelation flips that script entirely. Jesus wasn't defending, he was on the attack. He deliberately invaded enemy territory. In ancient Jewish thought, the wilderness wasn't neutral ground. It was often seen as the realm of chaos, demons, and dark spirits, a place outside God's blessing and order. It was symbolized by the scapegoat, which carried the sins of the people out into this demonic domain on the Day of Atonement. So, when the Gospels say Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness, think of it as a military deployment. He wasn't lost. He was on a mission. He marched straight into the heart of the enemy's stronghold to force a confrontation. He faced Satan not in the perfect Garden of Eden, where Adam had every advantage and still failed, but on Satan's home turf, in the desolate wasteland. By picking this battleground, Jesus showed that no place is beyond God's reach. He took the fight to the very heart of darkness to prove his authority over it. This wasn't about simply resisting temptation. It was about challenging evil's claim over the world. He entered the wilderness at his weakest to prove that even then, he was more powerful than evil at its strongest. This wasn't a test he stumbled into. It was a war he chose to fight and win. The fourth revelation is that the three temptations weren't just about committing a simple sin. They were strategic, insidious attacks on Jesus' identity and mission. Each one offered a shortcut that would have destroyed his entire purpose. The first temptation, turning stones to bread, wasn't really about the sin of eating. It was a temptation to use his divine power for his own needs, to put the physical above the spiritual, and to act on his own, apart from God the Father. His answer, "Man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God," was a declaration of total dependence. The second temptation, to throw himself from the temple, was even sneakier, with Satan twisting scripture to make his point. This was a temptation to force God's hand, to create a public spectacle to prove his identity, instead of trusting the Father's plan of quiet faithfulness leading to sacrifice. The final temptation was the ultimate prize, all the world's kingdoms for a moment of worship. This was the great shortcut. Satan offered Jesus the very power he came to win, but without the suffering, without the cross. It was an offer for a political crown without the thorns. By saying no, Jesus chose the path of suffering and sacrifice as the only real way to save humanity. These weren't just temptations to be bad. They were temptations to abandon his mission for an easy, hollow victory. The last and most profound revelation is what this victory truly accomplished. Jesus didn't just walk out of the desert after passing a hard test. Theologically, he emerged as the prototype of a new humanity, setting a new pattern for what it means to be human. The Bible presents Adam as the first representative of mankind. In a perfect garden, he failed a simple test of obedience, ushering in sin and death. In Christian theology, Jesus is seen as the second Adam in a barren wasteland. At his absolute weakest, he faced the ultimate test of obedience and won, opening the way to life. He succeeded where Adam failed, reversing the curse and starting the work of restoring everything. By defeating every temptation, Jesus proved that a life of perfect obedience to God was possible. Even under the worst pressure imaginable, he lived out the faithfulness that Adam and the nation of Israel had failed to achieve. He became the perfect representative for humanity, the one whose victory could be shared with all who follow him. This wasn't just a personal victory, it was a representative one. It qualified him to be our high priest, one who was tempted in every way just as we are, yet was without sin. His triumph wasn't just about beating Satan, it was about creating a new path for all of us. He walked out of that desert not just a victor, but as the pioneer of a renewed human race, ready to begin the ministry that would lead to the cross and the ultimate restoration of all things. So, the 40 days in the wild were so much more than a simple story of temptation. They were a brutal physical ordeal. They were a deliberate fulfillment of a 40-day pattern that reframed Israel's history. It was a bold invasion of enemy territory. The temptations themselves were cunning attacks on his divine mission, and his victory was a history-altering event that established Jesus as the champion for all humanity. Jesus' 40 days weren't a passive retreat. They were an active, brutal, and strategic victory that laid the foundation for his entire ministry. He faced the worst of the human condition, hunger, isolation, and pure evil so that we wouldn't have to face it alone. His victory becomes our strength, and his path becomes our hope. If this deep dive gave you a new perspective, share your thoughts in the comments below. And be sure to check out our other video on the secrets of the Garden of Eden right here. Thanks for watching.